Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 48. And today we are discussing last week's action and this weekend's fight with Danny Jacobs. Let's go! All right, last weekend, our first betting loss of the year. Mario Barrios against Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman dominated quite handily. I think I gave Barrios, it was 2 or 3 rounds. 2 or 3 rounds, maybe even 3. Barrios, first of all, let's talk about the office. Keith Thurman again injured his left hand. Again, talked about a hand injury, guys. After the fight, he said in the second or third round, he hit an uppercut, bruised his hand. So I told you this. I told you. Keith Thurman is susceptible to injury on his hand, and he injured it again. He looked pretty decent throughout the fight. He definitely looked a step above Mario Barrios. He really did, and I think with 8-ounce gloves, he would have absolutely gotten Mario out of there. I mean, he was landing very clean, very powerful shots on Barrios throughout the entire fight, and I think you have to give Barrios props for being able to take those shots, take as many of those shots. I mean, his face was looking very different at the end of that fight than when he entered the ring. Again, there is no shame in losing to Keith Thurman, but I think Barrios handlers need to take a break. Let's talk about it a little bit. Now, Thurman was moving a lot, was throwing a lot of hooks, lead hooks, a lot of power shots. It looked like a little bit like vintage Thurman in there at points. I know people were saying he was really cut up, but we did see stamina issues a little bit with Thurman in the sense where, not so much stamina issues, but he was hurt to the body. He was evidently hurt to the body. He even talked about in post-fight interviews that he done that if Barrios would have stepped more into that body shot, he probably could have put Thurman down. Maybe not out, but Thurman is a world-class fighter. It is apparent that he's still there, but the things that make Thurman interesting, the things that make Thurman vulnerable are also still there. I would not, at the current date, I would not take Keith Thurman against Spence or Crawford. He's just not there at welterweight. Welterweight is a very good, very strong division. Again, some of these lower weight classes are really powerful. Like, look, you can imagine reading some of these names. You got Crawford, Spence, Thurman, Ugas, Virgil Ortiz. Well, I'm not going to name Mike Garcia anymore. The most talented of the bunch in Jerome Ennis, who's just not there yet. I think he needs a few more fight. Kavaliakakis, obviously. Broner is around this weight class. I mean, we have Maurice Hooker. We have a decent amount of good fighters at this weight, because that top 5 is brutal. They're all championship level at that top 5. You're talking about Ortiz, Ugas, Thurman, Crawford, and Spence. Very, 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 very difficult top 5 at a welterweight. I think any one of those fights is difficult. I put Thurman right in the middle. I probably put him at number 4. If I take head-to-head picks, I'd probably put him number 4, number 3. So I put him above Ugas. I believe Ugas has the benefit of beating Pacquiao, right? Of beating Pacquiao technically into retirement. And he was obviously very competitive with Sean Porter in a losing effort a few years back. But I really don't see Ugas at that exact same level, especially at age 35, as I do those other welters. As I do the Thurman, as I do Crawford and Spence or Virgil Ortiz. I think he's just a notch below. Yes, it was a wonderful Pacquiao win. It was Pacquiao who's much older, guys. A Pacquiao who's had so many fights that his career could be broken up into like 3 Hall of Fame careers, and you beat the last tail end of the third career Hall of Fame career for Pacquiao. So that's all. I'm not saying necessarily that Ugas is the worst, and what a company you are to be in when you are, after beating Manny Pacquiao, after becoming a champ at the weight class, to be the worst in a 5 pick. That just goes to show you again how strong a weight class can be. I like Crawford and Spence at number 1 and 2, and I think I think, you know what? Maybe let's give Keith Thurman that number 3 spot, because Virgil Ortiz, we saw him drop, we saw him hurt against Kavliauskas, who himself is a good fighter, but not, clearly just a step below the championship level, at least at welter in 2022. Just at least at welter in 2022. By the way, Ortiz did get him out of there quicker than Terrence, but it was Ortiz fights a different fight than Terrence. So again, Thurman was landing hellacious shots, rearranged Barrios' face. Barrios was in there the entire time, so he wasn't getting like completely outclassed. He was just losing every single round. I don't know if you guys, it's similar to Gabe Rosado's last fight against Munguia. He was in it, like, in other words, he was dishing out damage and dishing out punishment, and in the fight, in the sense, like, he wasn't getting completely outclassed, but he was losing almost every round. This is the exact same thing that occurred here. I thought Barrios lost pretty much every single round. He was just doing work in every single round, including hurting Keith Thurman to the body in those mid rounds. But he just didn't have enough power outside of that. I know the 10-ounce gloves, but I think, like I said, I think those 10-ounce gloves helped Thurman. They hurted Thurman more. Had those been 8-ounce gloves, that would have helped Thurman. He would have absolutely gotten Barrios out there. I think when he really hurt him in that 4th round, I think. When Barrios was really hurt with the power shots. I mean, Thurman still has speed and pop. I mean, he looked one time in that sense. The power was there. But the question you have to ask yourself as a bettor who wants to then use this fight as a window into the future against other welterweights is that how much of it was Thurman being good and how much of it was Barrios really? I know in the telecast they were saying he's really a welter, but how much was this Barrios not being a real true welter? Yes, he has the height, but the height alone is not what decides it. Barrios last fought at 140. His last 3 or 4 fights have been at 140. Is he really a true welter? His power didn't quite seem there. Yeah, he hurt him to the body, but outside of that, like the jabs were coming off a little squared. He, like, when you throw a jab, you can tell that Barrios was more square than he needed to be. He needed to throw it at more of an angle, like sideways angle. This way you get more reach on your jab. Less likely for Thurman to then counter you, because when you step in and you're squared up on that jab, you're wide open for shots. All Thurman has to do is slip or throw a counter or an incoming shot, and you're going to be in range because you're stepping in with your jab, but you're also squared up a little bit, and Barrios does that. He needs to be tilted a little bit more, a little more sideways. But that's whatever. I think Barrios is a good fighter, but how good, we don't know. Like, obviously we saw Gervonta Davis stop him in the 11th, that Keith Thurman couldn't do. But I wouldn't read too much into that, in the sense where, like I said, the glove sizes were different. I think Thurman would have gotten him out in 4 or 5 had it been 8-ounce gloves, because at one point I looked like, at numerous points of the fight, Barrios was hurt. Thurman was only hurt once into the body. We did see Thurman take some rounds off. I think he moves too much. If you ask me now, again, are you asking me, am I being critical of Thurman? We have to be critical of Thurman here, guys. Thurman is, like I said, in the top 3, top 4, certainly the top 5 welters right now. Everyone's championship level championship level material. So there aren't going to be easy fights if he tries to go for the champions of this weight class. You have to assume that Thurman, you have to judge him as harshly as possible. So he moves too much. He needs to conserve his energy better. Now, I know why he wants to move much, because his movement creates those awkward angles. Roy Jones would do it. Take enough steps to the left, and then you lunge in, or too many steps to the right. This person can't get his feet set. So when you throw those lead hooks or leaping power shots, you can catch a person off rhythm, off balance. You can land, you can put him out, you can put him down. I mean, you can cause some serious damage. Which is why he's moving. But as he goes further and further into his mid-30s and late 30s, he won't be able to keep up that same level of activity. It takes a toll on your feet from moving for 12 rounds like that while throwing like these. Thurman does that. I don't want to say that it's a mistake, but you're told not to do this. He throws everything almost at one power level. And sometimes, I mentioned it before, is that you can get used to it. You can get used to getting hit hard. Your brain just, for some reason, like, accepts the fact that these are hard shots. It's when you adjust the power on your shots that things start to get funky. At least that's how we experience. That's how we're taught. So, for Barrios, does he stay at 147? Given what we saw against Thurman and now against and Gervonta Davis and the rankings that we see at 147, he's going to be well outside of the top 5. And then you're talking about Enes, Garcia, Avanesian, and obviously the Kavlikakas, the Broners. Does he beat any of those? Steniosis. I don't know. I don't know if he showed that he can beat any of those. At welterweight, he could be just outside the top 10. That's a difficult climb. He won't be a champion at this weight class. Can he go back down to 140? Well, guys, 140. Unfortunately, Teofimo's coming up there. Gervonta Davis can always make leaps up there. What's his name? Taylor's up there, who's fighting at the end of the month. Pro Grace, who's himself a very, very good fighter. It's difficult to say that at super lightweight, or you want to call it light welterweight, that he at 140 that he'd have much better shot. Obviously also again Sandor Martin, who wound up beating Mikey Garcia's down there. That guy can very well box very well. Again, I don't quite see where Barrios fits in. Where is his true weight class? He's a good fighter, but you also need to feel, by the way, after these kind of 2 losses, you have to give him a soft touch. He needs to gain his confidence back. He needs to get a couple of W's in. Do not wreck this guy's career, because he is a pretty good fighter, and I think he can challenge for a championship again. He just needs to get confidence. He needs to build some skills. There's some stuff that he needs to learn how to do. Sit down on some of his punches better. Step into his punches more. He doesn't do it. Sometimes he's left throwing arm punches. Those kind of things, they could be taught. They could be cultivated in a fighter, and you can have Mario Barrios come back as the exciting fighter we've seen him. But I worry that if you throw him in there with another heavy-handed guy, you're gonna break that chin of his. That's 2 rough fights that he's had, by the way, where he was competitive but losing. Although I think he was doing more damage to Gervonta. Competitive but losing, but also, took a hellacious beating at points. And he got his chin cracked in the Gervonta Davis fight, and over here he would have had these been 8-ounce gloves. He was hurt numerous times in this fight. You guys need to give him. First of all, he needs 6 months off at least of relaxation. Then he needs to come back against a soft touch. This isn't like one of those champs that is there taking on soft touch. This is the guy who fought 2 high-level, world-level fighters and lost. No harm in that. No shame in that. I mean, there's a lot of harm in that, but there's no shame in that. And I think he's deserving of a break and a little bit of a rebuild, retool. Now let's talk about this weekend. We have at this point, the old mongoose of the middleweight division. We have our boy Danny Jacobs, who's fighting at 168. He's fighting against John Ryder. Now, to those who don't know, John Ryder made his name by losing competitively. A little bit like King Kong, Luis Ortiz. By losing competitively to champions, he makes his name as a feared fighter. I don't like these kind of reputations, because as we see with Luis Ortiz and with fighters who lose but are competitive, now with Mario Barrios, as we just saw, they still lost. And what people are going to say is, well, John Ryder fought to a close fight with Callum Smith, who was undefeated at the time. He fought to a very close, arguably won the fight against split decision against Rocky Fielding. And then he's beaten a few kind of fringe contenders along the way. Also lost against Jack Amfeld. But I don't like when this is kind of how we're talking about the fighter. When we're saying, oh, you know what, he gave competitive showings to these champions. So what does that mean for us as bettors? We just saw Mario Barrios give a competitive showing to a loss against Gervonta Davis. Danny Jacobs is clearly on his way out. He's very clearly on the decline. Daniel Jacobs. Let's talk about Daniel Jacobs. We got some time here. Let's talk about our boy Daniel Jacobs. At one point, he was. I don't want to say he was like the. He was going to be like the next giant star at middleweight, but at one point he was the highlight, undefeated, many knockout. What do you call it? Up and coming fighter who was giving a championship shot. Everyone thought that they were going to market him, Brooklyn, New York, He goes and he fights this little known, undefeated, but like, come on, some unknown Russian called Dmitry Pirog. This is back in 2010. This is 12 years ago. Holy moly. Wow. 12 years ago, goes and fights Dmitry Pirog, who was undefeated but little known at that time. And everyone thinks that, this is an easy belt for us to pick up. As us, I mean like promoters to pick up, and that'll be that. We'll market Daniel Jacobs, build him up slow, and sunshine and rainbows and big money for everyone. Well, Dmitry Pirog has a different idea, and I think by about 20 seconds, if you guys watch that fight, Emmanuel Stewart is talking about how, like, wait a second, something's not right here. This is a completely different fight. The late great Emmanuel Stewart, by the way, talking about that. Like, this is a completely different fight than Danny expected. And, it's crazy just how good of a boxing eye that Emmanuel Stewart has, that within 20 seconds, he can tell that this is going to be a rough night for Danny Jacobs, the way Pirog is moving. And it was. The judges had absurd scores of giving Daniel Jacobs, I think they gave him like 3 of the first 4 rounds before the knockout. Guys, Daniel Jacobs maybe won 1 round on that, maybe 2, but there's no way he won 3. All the hard shots were landed by Pirog. Pirog was a point making Danny Jacobs look very, very vulnerable in there, very hurt eventually in the 5th round. He pulls one of this, like, he switches from southpaw to orthodox to southpaw and then lands, walking halfway across the ring, lands a knockout blow, highlight reel against Danny Jacobs. So, obviously that was talked off. He was young, he was inexperienced. No one knew how good Pirog was. So let's take it back. So Danny Jacobs goes on a huge win streak. Eventually, of course, capturing the belt. Beating the likes of Caleb Truau, Sergio Mora, Peter Killen, Sergio Mora again. Again, the Mora fights were interesting because in the first time they fought, both fighters wound up going down. So interesting. And then, after holding a portion of the belt and after, picking up some good top 10 wins, in 2016, Daniel Jacobs is thrown in there against Golovkin. And he really puts on a good fight, a very good fight. He goes down at one point in the fight in the 4th round, but one judge had as close as 114-113. That means he really had a 114-114, but the knockdown made the difference. No one would blame him for losing to Golovkin, especially when he put up such a good performance. It was a close fight. Some people believe he won. I don't think he won. I thought it was a close fight. I thought it was a 7-5 fight with the knockdown. I thought that 115-112 scores were right. I just did not see Danny winning that fight. It was a close fight, but competitive, very competitive fight. And actually, one of the first times I was just like, man, Golovkin's really not the same anymore, is he? I don't know. I said 2016. I meant 2017. I was like, man, Golovkin is really not the same fighter anymore. He then goes on and fights Luis Arias, Suletsky, and then goes against stablemate and sparring partner Sergey Deryachenko, who goes on and, he wins. He beats Deryachenko by split decision and a fight many thought Deryachenko actually won. I did not. I thought the fight was close, similar to Golovkin, but I did not think he won Deryachenko. I thought Danny Jacobs did win the fight with the knockdown. I thought it was 7-5. Just going in his favor. And that gives him the money fight against Canelo. And Danny Jacobs actually fights one of his best fights of his life against Canelo. He really hung in there. Wound up losing a unanimous decision, 115-113 twice, 116-112. He landed numerous shots on Canelo. He did what he had to do. He showed his mettle. I think that was his last call out. Maybe he burned himself out too much. But then he goes and fights Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. already at 168. He's moving up. saying that 160 was a little too hard for him to make. You know, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. quit like he did in like the numerous fights. Nothing exciting about that fight. And he goes and fights on his last fight, Gabriel Rosado. Now, I said it simply because I don't think I was doing the podcast yet. But I said that Gabe Rosado can fight to his level of opposition. Or there are nights when he wakes up and Gabe Rosado is championship level fighter, and nights when he wakes up and Gabe Rosado is outside the top 20. I like Gabe Rosado, true journeyman, a true fighter, a good boxing eye and brain. And I'm a big fan of Gabe Rosado. I was rooting for him, and to my surprise, what I thought I watched was Gabe Rosado beat Daniel Jacobs like 8-4 or something like that. And I'm thinking, no way. I'm hearing split decision, and Gabe Rosado loses. Daniel Jacobs wins 115-113 twice, and 113-115 for Gabe Rosado, split decision. Now, after watching a fight like that, Daniel Jacobs' stock has completely, I feel, in my eyes, kind of collapsed. I don't know if he just doesn't have it in him. I know some people say he doesn't look like he wants to do this anymore. Maybe he made too much money. I mean, the Golovkin Canelo fights probably paid him millions of dollars. For a kid from Brooklyn, well-spoken, well-dressed, has a head on his shoulders. It doesn't seem like he needs to fight. He's doing it out of competition, love of the game, love of the sport, love of the fight. But he doesn't need to actually fight. And here we have him against John Ryder. Does he not need to fight enough that he's going to lose to John Ryder? I don't think so. But I feel the casino have it reasonably priced. They have John Ryder at plus 130, Daniel Jacobs at minus 160. That sounds right, but I wouldn't put any money on John Ryder. I don't care how well he fought against Rocky Fielding and Callum Smith. He didn't fight that well against Callum Smith. He fought reasonably well, but not that well. He fought the fight that everyone thought he won was against Rocky Fielding. And, Rocky Fielding got KO'd in 3 by Canelo. Drunk, 6 or 7 week notice post-fight, Kovalev wound up nearly beating Canelo. I wound up outboxing Canelo before getting stopped in the 11th. Don't tell me stuff about Rocky Fielding, a natural 175 or getting clipped in 3 rounds. I understand it's Canelo, but please. So the over-under over here is over 10.5 at minus 300, under 10.5 at minus 240. The over-under, man. I think I had it. What do you call it? I think I took the under, right, in that fight against the Thurman. Maybe I should take a break for the under. Sometimes this over-under stuff really kind of bugs me out. If I had to choose an outcome here, I mean, I just think Daniel Jacobs is going to win this fight. Do I think he's going to grab the stoppage? I mean, Daniel Jacobs is going to be a significantly bigger fighter than is John Ryder. John Ryder's a 5'9" guy. Yes, he's been fighting bigger guys his entire time, but he has some power, but he's still under 50% KO ratio. Daniel Jacobs is a legit fighter. He's going to be punching down on his opponent. I don't think Daniel Jacobs punches harder than Callum Smith, but you don't necessarily need to. You just need to land the shots that you need to punch at. Maybe Callum Smith was too tall for Ryder. That can happen too. But I like Daniel Jacobs here. I'm probably going to sit this one out, but I wouldn't even speculate with the plus 130. You're telling me people, the casinos are now telling you that this fight is closer than the ThurmanBarrios fight. I don't believe that for 1 second. Not for 1 second. John. If anything, I would take Daniel Jacobs by knockout. If I had to take a non-line money pick, it would be, again, guys, not financial advice. It would be Daniel Jacobs by knockout. That's what I like in this fight. Right now, Daniel Jacobs by knockout, TKO or DQ gets you plus 400. Again, this is all DraftKings, guys. Plus 400. It's actually crazy because John Ryder's plus 600 for that same thing. So, technical decision plus 115 for Daniel Jacobs. So there we have it, guys. That's the fight I'm talking about this weekend. That's going to do it again. First betting loss of the year. They got to come. We were on a 3 bet winning streak, so 3-1 on the year so far. Not bad at all. 75% hit rate is pretty good. Again, obviously depends on how much you bet and when you bet, and this is all going to matter. but nonetheless, pretty good. All right, that's going to do it for me. I guess see you guys next week. It's over.